let's go ahead and talk about the Acolyte in Star Wars, because right now all of the discourse in this community is all around what is going on with the Acolyte in Star Wars. Certainly a lot of people have strong opinions on whether this is a good show or not. I'm seeing people talking about everything from the characters to review bombing to the critic score matter to the audience score matter. I want to talk about the idea of whether intellectual property or franchises such as Star Wars can ever truly die, which is a discussion you were having with people yesterday on Twitter.
Yeah. A lot of people are saying Star Wars is dead, Star Wars is dead, Star Wars is dead. Repeat the same thing.
Quick question. Have you watched The Acolyte?
No.
Or any recent Star Wars stuff?
No, I stopped watching Disney entirely because I decided that Disney was the problem. It doesn't matter what they're putting out. It just matters that they're run by radical leftists who engage in cancel culture.
Plus, you used to be the great big Star Wars fan.
I love Star Wars. I missed Obi-Wan Kenobi. I missed Mandalorian 3. I wanted to watch these things. I wanted to watch Book of Boba Fett, but I didn't because they fired Gina Carano in a vicious way. I mean, they, called her abhorrent. Her views were just basic conservative views.
Not even
like conservative, like
basically
liberal
libertarian-ish.
Yeah, and so the discourse is all right now. What's going on is everyone's talking about, look, this is the nail in the coffin for this franchise. It's not going to be able to move on after this, and you don't seem to take that perspective.
No, I don't think so at all. I understand that, like, when it comes to an IP like Star Wars, I think Star Wars can be dead for you. I think you can decide that, Star Wars is done. You're not going to watch anymore, but there can be bad entries in something like Star Wars, and then something great comes along like The Mandalorian. All of these things are just run by creative people, and good creative people can do great things with anything.
Yeah.
Somebody brought up how, like, Buck Rogers was effectively dead. For now, you know what I mean? But what if some amazing creative person decided they wanted to, remake Buck Rogers for this generation? It would be alive again.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I took away is everybody was done with Star Wars after the new trilogy, right? Like, they turned a lot of people off. Certainly, each new film brought in less and less return on investment. But as soon as The Mandalorian came out, it was like people were instantly willing to trust again. And that's the thing. It's like,
good.
I point out, I'm like, look, these people want to like what you're making. They don't want to hate it. They want to give you the benefit of the doubt. It's actually kind of a testament to how bad they are at their job that they're not able to win them back with minimal effort.
Well, the fact that The Acolyte had such a low audience score before it came out might show that people are done giving you the benefit of the doubt and they don't want to like what comes out from Star Wars now.
I had to look into the numbers on that. Like, look, there were a lot of ones.
It was already rotten before it was out.
There was a lot of ones on there, but there was also a lot of 4.5 or 5s.
Was it? Didn't The Acolyte get millions of views?
4.8 million views isn't.
That's
really,
a lot.
Is that
a lot?
With their subscriber base, it's the best that they've done this year. I guess that is their numbers, but they haven't previewed or premiered a whole ton of stuff. And Star Wars numbers, that's not really that good. If you look at what 4.8 million is now, if those were individual buyers of movie tickets, sure. But when all they are is 4.8 million people who remembered they have Disney Plus suddenly
and tuned in,
and got bored.
And the first 2 episodes doesn't matter as far as those numbers. What you have to look at is audience retention, because they didn't drop all of the episodes at once. What is the viewership going to look like in episode 4 or episode 5? Right now, there's a lot of buzz that's extraneous and not necessarily connected to the material itself. It's about whether Leslie Headland and the people involved in Star Wars are doing right by the fan base, which is connected to The Acolyte, but isn't about the show itself. So that interest that's there right now is propped up by the anger that people have because of the clips that have come out and things like that, which is why we understand that outrage market is not the one from 5 years ago.
No. I'm talking about this clip of what's her name, Headland, talking with the star and laughing about how Star Wars has always been gay is
R2-D2 is a lesbian,
just meant to be offensive and outrageous and to anger people. I mean, you want to know how what's the drop off going to be by episode 4? I predict 1%. 1% of the current audience will still be watching by episode 4. people want to give Star Wars a chance. It's not a dead brand. People do want to keep watching Star Wars, and they just keep getting slapped in the face by activists who seem to really dislike. They've identified the fans as like, incel white male.
That word gets used a lot.
Incel,
incel gets thrown around in a lot of that. I think a lot of this is coming back to look.
We got a couple super chats before you say that. Codex Terra sent a chicken emoji.
10,000
chickens
rupees?
in the chat.
Rupees
again.
Okay, let's go.
And Virtual Reviews said Caitlin Clark is a psyop.
Caitlin Clark is just a very good basketball player, and everything else around it is just a whole bunch of hoopla going on right now.
Hoopla,
I don't
psyop.
use hoopla in a word a lot.
They're
in a
trying to
sentence
take
a lot.
her
but
out, too.
They are. Okay, like here's the thing. I think a lot of this with this discussion comes down to a bit of a semantic argument. Now,
Yes.
the point that I have is like when people say something is dying, that's a colloquial term that they're used to saying that, look, it's in a way a living organism because it's employing tons of people. The idea will never itself die. But if a shark doesn't swim, it drowns, right? And you kind of have to continue to make, and you have to continue to produce.
You have to continue?
Well,
where did this idea come from?
The
that you have to
idea
continue to produce
for a
that stuff?
company to spend a certain amount of money, to spend $4 billion on a brand and then let it sit in the corporate world isn't feasible. Meaning that like you're coming at it from the artist perspective, I'm coming at it from the corporate buyer perspective, meaning that they spent a certain amount of money on this property. It loses money. Remember when COVID was going on and they were talking about all the money they were losing by the movies they had already finished but couldn't release.
Yep.
When it sits on the shelves, it loses value. So the idea of it dying isn't necessarily about the idea of the property being dead. It's that it's dying a slow death because it's not bringing them money.
They're just pumping out content, just pumping out like just garbage content. But when they get a hit, like I was saying, Baby Yoda was a cultural phenomenon. A lot of people said Baby Yoda was a fad, whatever. Baby Yoda, everybody was talking about it. Everybody was buying the toys. Yeah. Everybody loved Baby Yoda. To me, that's a huge, enormous hit. That's impressive.
And that's the thing, right? Is like they need to find ways to monetize aspects of the brand. Certainly, that's the other thing. Baby Yoda they didn't have any faith in it to begin with because the toys weren't mass produced to begin with.
Crazy.
Like the idea that they created it without toys ready to go. There was a huge market for knockoff Baby Yoda stuff on Etsy.
It's all over the place.
As soon as the show came out, because those people were able to understand the value of what Disney had created.
And they're
Lucasfilm
producing like a Mandalorian and Grogu movie now because of that response.
I don't think Pedro Pascal is going to be in that one either. So
he's not in The Mandalorian, so that's not surprising.
Like I think what it is like a lot of it is like you as like a creative and as a creator takes a different perspective of the phrase dying, of an IP dying than somebody who consumes the content, or certainly somebody who looks at it from a business perspective.
A company can always die. These characters can be bent, but it's really hard to break them. And somebody brought up Batman and Robin from the 1990s. Said that successful franchise going, and then one of the worst movies of all time.
But they took some time off after that.
Not that much time, did they? Think about
2005.
2005. That's just 10 years.
I mean, 10 years is a long time. But at that time, comic book movies weren't they weren't taking time off of a super successful brand at that time for those movies because they weren't the cash cows that they are now.
Oh my God, Batman '89.
They
you
made
don't think
money,
was a
but it
cash cow?
wasn't the culture. But every 3 years, right? They weren't releasing one every year. They weren't releasing multiple films a year.
Maybe that was a better system.
Yeah. I mean, that's not
the idea of creating Star Wars TV shows in and of itself doesn't make sense to me. If you want to keep the value of the Star Wars brand name, it should be theater releases only, in my mind.
Well, you're right, and the thing is, they think Star Wars is the world of Star Wars, and really, what it is they captured lightning in a bottle with a certain group of actors that had a lot of chemistry together. Characters that were well drawn and distinct in this fantastic world with a great storyline. You can't just create a bunch of lesbians of color, give them lightsabers, and throw them into Tatooine and expect it to work and call them Jedis. It's just not Star Wars. It looks like Star Wars, but it isn't Star Wars because
doesn't even look like
I like
Star
the
Wars
description
now.
saying it's a skin suit of Star Wars.
That's true. Yeah.
And that was one of all my critiques for The Acolyte, as somebody who is not a diehard Star Wars fan, are objectively about the performances, and every single one of them looked like a young actor who knew what Star Wars was growing up, being given this opportunity and trying to bring Star Wars to life and failing miserably. Whereas the actors who originally brought it to life, it didn't have the cultural cachet yet because they created it. So they brought it to life because they were gifted actors. These young performers don't have that gravitas.
So do you think that Jon Favreau is going to come for Kathleen Kennedy's place?
I wish she would. But Kathleen Kennedy is so embedded in her job, she's going to have to leave on her own. And boy, would it be great to get Jon Favreau in there because he gets it. I mean, The Mandalorian was connected to the old lore, to all the old stories. It even had Luke Skywalker in it. A Boba Fett looking character, a Mandalorian, Baby Yoda. It was Star Wars. I don't know what this stuff is. I don't know what the Acolyte is. I can't. It just seems like cosplay to me.
It does. The whole thing does. Even the costuming is rough looking. Like one of my biggest criticisms of a lot of like fantasy and stuff these days, if you watch, it's like it looks like the costume was just pressed and washed, and it doesn't look like they've actually lived in it.
One person
right?
commented on our Acolyte review saying exactly what I was thinking. Like, it doesn't make sense to put wushu hand-to-hand combat in a Star Wars TV show or movie. It just looks out of place.
But here's the thing. The people who are storyboarding it, if they don't actually care about Star Wars, just like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if... And that's, look, the idea, that concept, the idea of people, creatives getting together and say, wouldn't it be cool if... That's a good impulse, but you need somebody there to push back and be like, that's great. In something else. It's great
like,
that
what
you
if we
came
did
up with
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, but in space, bro? And then we put Star Wars on the name so that people will watch it.
But that's every movie pitch, right? Like every elevator pitch for something is like, it's John Wick
fine if
in
you're like,
space.
You're just chatting shit with your friends over drinks, but like you're selling a product.
What's a franchise that you think is like ripe for a comeback?
I mean, I want to say Superman, but I don't even know if they can do. I mean, I know there's a Superman movie on the way. I'm terrified of it. I love the Christopher Reeves Superman so much, but I honestly think like Zorro, Robin Hood, Tarzan.
They did diverse Zorro on Amazon Prime.
And then you toss it away, and then you do it again.
Yeah.
I mean, see, that's the thing about these ideas. Like,
Zorro's an interesting one because it's got strong name recognition, but I would venture to bet that a lot of people know what it is, but maybe haven't even watched Zorro. Like, you just know the name, and maybe you know about the mask, but you've never actually consumed Zorro content of some sort. I know He-Man is getting a movie. They're like, which I don't think that Hollywood in current year can actually do without screwing up.
Who was that again? Nicholas Galitzine?
It wasn't who they should have gotten,
Galitzine?
which is they should have just gotten like roided out Zac Efron to do it.
Yeah, extra Juvederm.
Yeah, like that's like, what else? Anything else you can think of? Cyber Frog movie?
Yeah, well, that's on its way. But no, we got to do. I'm doing Rainbow the Brute, which is examining girls' toy properties and then masculinizing them. High tea versions of like the Care Bears and Rainbow Bright. And honestly, I always liked Rainbow Bright. I always thought Rainbow Bright was pretty neat. I actually tried to get Rainbow Bright from Hallmark.
Okay.
So that I could do a comic book for girls using that mythology. I thought that would have been.
Would it cost a fortune to do that?
Somebody beat me to it.
Oh,
like the same day, somebody beat me to it as I was going to open up that conversation. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that could I think could be brought back.
Thundercats. Somebody suggested Thundercats. Thundercats could definitely be done these days.
Yeah, I think that's being done right now. A new comic book series. Mask. Remember Mask? Mm-hmm. The vehicles that became, weapons.
Gargoyles did they end up remaking Gargoyles on? I think they just put the original Gargoyles on Disney, but they didn't remake it. I could be misremembering that. But there's a lot of stuff from my childhood that could be brought back. There's a lot of properties that get left alone. One of the ones I always make fun of is like, there's a TV show from James Cameron in the 90s called Dark Angel with Jessica Alba. It was like her first real role. It was the quintessential girl boss. She's a mutant, so she can beat up men, and it makes sense because she's a mutant. And they haven't redone it since. So it was a diverse character.
But a lot of people say like, don't redo it, don't bring it back because they will F it up.
But
and I disagree
really
because
liked.
I oppose bringing anything back in principle because that just shows that we're living in a time of like poverty of ideas.
Yeah.
Did you guys see? I don't know if you guys like Twin Peaks. Did you see Twin Peaks: The Return?
She saw it.
I don't know if I liked it. I liked the first 2 seasons.
Twin Peaks, like the idea behind Twin Peaks that David Lynch was trying to say was that we take murder too lightly on television, and he wanted to do this thing where just the murder of this one girl impacted the whole town for a long time.
That's what The Killing did, the Danish series that they eventually adapted to
I remember that.
They did an American version
That
of
was
Joel
pretty good.
Kinnaman. It's the murder of Rosie Larson, and the whole promotional material behind season 1 was pictures of the actress who dies and says who killed Rosie Larson, and that's
beautiful. And it makes that so well. People wanted to know who did it. They wanted to know who killed Laura Palmer, and David Lynch never wanted to say. He never wanted to tell the truth about it. It was going to remain a mystery. It wasn't the point, but the network forced him to, and then he left the show after doing that. He thought the show was
wasn't a bad
dead.
way to wrap it up, but I won't
Well,
spoil it.
it wasn't
it's been
ever
out for a long
supposed
time.
to be, but The Return, like Twin Peaks: The Return, was all about how fans are demanding that the show come back, and so he's like, all right, I'm going to tell you how I feel in a coded 18-episode series where Twin Peaks is trying to return, you're trying to make it return, and it's not returning because Laura Palmer's mystery has already been solved. So everybody's acting stilted and weird. And
I mean, the ratings even dropped at the time of the original series after
it wasn't
that
after,
episode.
The mystery was solved.
Then they just had a bunch of pointless episodes.
Yeah. Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.